Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. Victor Abreu from Gov't says his firm has identified 7 promising structures that are presumed to contain vast amounts of gas and oil in the East Sea. The expected 20% success rate, he says, is comparatively high. Professors affiliated with one of the country's main hospitals, Seoul National University, have voted to halt medical services from later this month, unless the government completely revokes its administrative action against trainee doctors. A UNESCO advisory body has once again deferred the nomination of Japan's controversial Sado gold mine. Additional documents have been requested from Japan. The founder of a U.S.-based oil and gas consulting firm, Gov't, said a basin off South Korea's east coast held high potential for a natural gas and oil deposit, but required exploratory drilling. Victor Abreu explained during a press conference on Friday that data suggested a deposit of fossil fuels in the region, which led the KNOC to commission the firm. He also said the site has 7 promising structures that could hold up to 14 billion barrels of natural gas and oil, and that the estimated likelihood of successfully drilling these structures is 20%. Now, this means that for every 5 of these locations drilled, 1 of them is likely to yield results. Abreu said that this is higher than average. Professors at Seoul National University have agreed not to perform their duties and services from later this month, saying they won't return unless the government lifts administrative actions against trainee doctors. Our Lee Sang-hyeok has more.
Concerns are being raised about widespread walkouts at hospitals after medical professors at Seoul National University announced their decision to suspend outpatient services and surgeries from later this month. The Korean Medical Association, which represents private practitioners, has been conducting a vote among its 130,000 members this week on whether to suspend medical services. The vote runs until Friday, and as of 6 p.m. on Thursday, more than 45% voted to suspend services. This comes after the Emergency Committee of Professors at Seoul Medical University and Seoul National University Hospital announced on Thursday that all departments, excluding essential departments such as emergency and intensive care units, will suspend outpatient services and surgeries starting June 17. The decision was made following a vote conducted with professors at 4 hospitals affiliated with Seoul National University. The Emergency Committee said that the suspensions will continue until the government completely withdraws administrative actions against residents and carries out measures to bring the current situation back to normal. The South Korean government on Tuesday announced that it will halt administrative procedures against trainee doctors, such as license suspension for trainee doctors who return to work. The professors at Seoul National University are demanding a complete withdrawal of administrative actions and not just a suspension. The government also announced on the same day that it will allow hospitals to accept residents' resignation letters, giving them the option to look for work at other hospitals. The KMA is expected to announce the results of the vote and its stance going forward at a meeting to be held at the KMA building on Sunday afternoon. Lee Sang-hyeok, Arirang News.
A Russian train carrying tourists departed for North Korea for the first time in 4 years. This is according to U.S. media outlet NK News on Thursday. Quoting a Russian Federal Customs Service, it said, as of Thursday morning, 41 tourists were en route to North Korea. Now, all of the passengers on board the train were Russian nationals. The rail services connecting the North Korean border city of Rasan and Vladivostok were previously suspended due to the pandemic. Russia's Far Eastern Primorsky Krai government says more than 400 Russian tourists have visited North Korea between February and May this year. An advisory body to a committee of UNESCO has withheld the nomination of a former controversial Japanese gold mine for World Heritage designation. The latest decision could have a decisive impact on Japan's second attempt for the inscription slated for this July. Lee Sang-hyeok has more.
The International Council on Monuments and Sites is one of the 3 advisories to the UNESCO World Heritage Committee, which recommends World Heritage designations. On Thursday, the Japanese Agency for Cultural Affairs announced that the council recommended that its Sado mine be withheld from World Heritage designation, demanding additional documents. The recommendation comes as Japan applied for the inscription of the controversial mine for the second time in January last year, after its previous submission in February 2022 was turned down due to incomplete documents. Japan has been pushing to inscribe the mine, which in the 17th century was one of the world's largest producers of gold, on the World Heritage List, but its bid has led to immense protests from South Korea over the lack of its historical context. Seoul says Tokyo failed to include the fact that the mine was where thousands of Koreans were forced to work during World War II during the Japanese colonial period. South Korea called on Japan to include a full account of the mine's history. The advisory body's evaluation is regarded as having a decisive impact on the World Heritage Committee's final decision on the inscription. An inscription on the World Heritage List requires over 2/3 of votes from member states, but it's customary for the final decision to be delivered upon consensus. That decision will be announced at a meeting in New Delhi in July. Lee Sang-hyeok, Arirang News.
The European Central Bank has cut its key interest rate by 0.25%, the first rate cut in 5 years. But the ECB president says the path ahead remains bumpy. Lee Jin tells us more.
On Thursday, the Frankfurt-based European Central Bank cut its key interest rate by a quarter point, taking the figure now to 3.75%. This marks the bank's first such interest rate cut in 5 years. ECB President Christine Lagarde said that inflation had eased enough for the central bank to start lowering rates, but didn't refer to any indication of future rate cuts, and added that there is a bumpy road ahead.
We have to be persistent, we have to be determined, we have to be data dependent, but we cannot give up on the objective. And our objective is to tame inflation and to bring prices back, to bring inflation back to 2% in the medium term.
The ECB's target for inflation remains to reduce inflation to as close to 2% as possible, though data shows that inflation is expected to come to 2.2% by 2025. While the 2.6% inflation recorded in May is well down from its peak of 10.6% in October of 2022, the decline has slowed in recent months, and there have even been hints of an uptick. Meanwhile, inflation in the services sector remains high at 4.1%. The latest rate cut also marks a divergence from the U.S. Federal Reserve, which has yet to start cutting interest rates. Lee Jin, Arirang News.
Following Israel's airstrike on a UN-run school in central Gaza on Thursday, a report has cited experts who verified the use of U.S.-made bombs. And Hamas says no ceasefire proposal will be signed without a permanent ceasefire. Ian He has the details.
Weapons experts analyzing footage of the Israeli airstrike on a Gaza school, where around 40 people lost their lives in the early hours of Thursday morning, suggest that Israel likely used U.S.-made bombs. According to a Washington Post report on the same day, 5 experts who examined footage taken following the attack verified that the nose cone of a GBU-39, small-diameter bomb, was manufactured by Boeing. Local officials in Gaza said that Israel had hit the Al-Sardi school, operated by the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Nusayr refugee camp. The school was reportedly sheltering displaced people, with local officials saying that at least 37 people were killed, including women and children.
We are displaced in Al-Qastal Towers. My son called us at 2:30 in the morning to say that Ahmed, her other son, had been martyred. They hit them with a missile in the classroom in the school.
Israeli forces are saying that the attack was precisely conducted to target at least 30 Hamas militants inside the school.
We conducted the strike once our intelligence and surveillance indicated that there were no women or children inside the Hamas compound, inside those classrooms.
While the Israeli government says it will release more information about the strike, including the names of the victims, the U.S. said it expects Israel to be fully transparent in sharing the information publicly. Meanwhile, according to a Wall Street Journal report, Hamas's leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, told Arab mediators on Thursday that Hamas is not going to surrender without a permanent ceasefire. This is Hamas's first response to an apparent Israeli 3-phase ceasefire proposal outlined by U.S. President Joe Biden at the end of last month. On Thursday, the leaders of 17 countries, including the United States, issued a joint statement backing the proposal, which includes the release of the hostages. Lee, Arirang News.
The largest union at South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics began a walkout on Friday. The union delivered guidelines to all of its 28,000 members regarding taking collective leave. Market research firm TrendForce said, though, the one-day walkout wouldn't affect Samsung's manufacturing process, pointing to Samsung's high dependence on automation. It also said that because Thursday was a holiday and many employees had originally planned to take a day off. An union official said that the collective leave is the only first step of plans for a general strike. It is unknown how many employees are taking part in Friday's walkout. South Korea's men's national football team booked a spot in the third round of Asian qualification for the 2026 FIFA World Cup on Thursday, comfortably beating Singapore by 0-0. Lee Sang-hyeok and Tottenham Hotspur's Son Heung-min both scored braces at Singapore's National Stadium, with the parent-strained German man opening the scoring after 9 minutes. Ulsan HTFC forward Chu Min-gyu scored his first international goal and set up 3 others. Bae Jun-ho of Stoke City and Wolverhampton's Hwang Hee-chan completed the barrage of goals in the 79th and 81st minutes. The Taeguk Warriors take on China in Seoul on Tuesday night, with China needing a draw to guarantee qualification. The esports industry is developing fast, even having made its debut last year at the Asian Games. Now, among many games, the most popular is League of Legends, and to live up to its popularity, the game developer introduced its own Hall of Fame. Now, the first inductee was no other than Korea's Lee Sang-hyeok, better known by his gaming handle, Faker. Our Kim Bo-kyung was at the site of celebration ceremony.
The unkillable Demon King, the greatest of all time. There are so many titles given to T1 star player Lee Sang-hyeok, also known as Faker. And now he gains one more, the first ever inductee into the League of Legends' own Hall of Fame, introduced by the game's developer Riot Games this year. In recognition of Faker's stunning career and contributions, a promotional hall was set up in Junggu District.
This whole building has been turned into a shrine for Korea's very own esports legend Faker, who is the very first inductee into the Hall of Legends. As you can see, so many fans have flocked to the site.
10 LCK titles, 2 mid-season invitational titles, and 4 World Championship trophies. The biggest trophy haul in League of Legends history. There were times when he struggled, though, especially after his consecutive MSI wins in 2016 and 2017. He went a long time without a trophy in the international arenas, and with his wrist injury, many doubted him, until he gloriously won the World Championship in 2023. With such a glorious career, fans agreed that Faker deserves his place in the Hall of Fame.
For 11 years, Faker recorded 10 LCK victories and 4 World Championships. It's such an unprecedented record, and no player can easily follow suit.
It is quite rare in other sports for a professional player to be inducted into a Hall of Fame before their retirement. While saying he believes it is a reflection of people's recognition of his career, Faker said it is all the more meaningful for him. Regarding his truthful personality and good deeds, he says he tries his best to behave properly.
Given that most of the audience members watching the game are quite young, they can be very much influenced. So I think I try my best to be careful, live a desirable life.
As for how a professional game player should act, he said victories and fans' recognition are what make a professional player valuable. But something else matters more.
What matters is if you yourself are satisfied with your work. Leaving my past achievements behind, I'll consider every new season a way to pave a new way, keep going on, and focus on future tournaments.
Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The majority of odor complaints in South Korea are due to the livestock sector. A local research team has developed a technology that not only processes livestock manure in a shorter period, but also turns the waste into an agent usable in agriculture. Park Kwon-woo has more.
One of the biggest problems that livestock farmers have to deal with is odor from manure decomposition. The process of treating livestock manure releases nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, and pungent-smelling ammonia. Treating 100 tons of manure produces up to 800 kilograms of ammonia.
There is odor from the farms, but it is worse at the manure treatment facility. The stages of storing or fermenting the manure releases compounds that cause the stench.
Existing methods take up to 2 months, but now a technology has been developed that not only reduces the time to just a single day, but turns the livestock manure into what is called biochar, combining the words biomass and charcoal. Carbon waste is trapped in the pellets and can be used to improve soil quality. There are 3 steps to the process: dewatering, drying, and heating. In the first step, wet manure is pressed through a squeezer, while already dry manure is ground to smaller pieces. Then the manure is dried with 10 baffle plates functioning like a hairdryer to drop the moisture level to under 20% in just 1 minute. In the final step, thermal decomposition produces the biochar pellets. The heat used in step 3 is set up to be reused in the drying process of step 2.
With the existing methods of processing livestock manure, it is very difficult to turn the compost back into the agricultural cycle because of overnutrition. But this biochar can solve this issue, as well as other environmental problems.
The biggest obstacle that stands in the way of this new technology becoming commercialized is its cost. The research team is looking for a way to increase the daily processing scale tenfold from its current capacity of 10 tons, as it also explores options to export this technology. 박건우, Arirang News.
Experiments to induce artificial rainfall have been underway for Korea some considerable time. And the Korean Meteorological Administration is now focusing on its work on preventing forest fires by raising the humidity through induced rain on top of natural rainfall. Cha Yoon-kyung reports.
The meteorological aircraft Nara flies through thick clouds with dispenser set in its wing, spreading silver iodide crystals. The crystals condense the water molecules in clouds, making them denser, which causes them to fall as rain. Experiments on cloud seeding to produce so-called artificial rain began in 1963 to prevent forest fires, utilizing aircraft and much later drones and other ground-based equipment. Artificial rainfall experiments to reduce the amount of fine dust blowing in from the Gobi Desert were started above the West Sea 5 years ago. However, they failed to produce any additional rainfall. And although last year saw the experiment's success rate rise by 86%, scientists deemed that this was still insufficient.
The average increase in the amount of rain was about 1.4 millimeters over the past 3 years using one aircraft.
Since the amount of rainfall has not increased despite the continuous experiments, the Korean Meteorological Administration decided to focus on raising humidity levels. From March to April, the moisture content of dried leaves is only 10.7%, but with rainfall, this goes up by 90 to 140%, reducing the risk of combustion and therefore wildfires.
As long as we can raise the humidity when it is dry, we will be able to prevent forest fires. That is our new approach.
The KMA plans to conduct 77 experimental flights to prevent forest fires this year using 2 additional aircraft. While disputes over the effectiveness of artificial rainfall continue, all eyes are on whether cloud seeding in 2024 will successfully prevent such fires. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. We begin today in the US and the private sector space race with SpaceX's giant Starship rocket surviving re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere on Thursday, while Boeing's Starliner managed to dock at the International Space Station despite a thruster's glitch on the same day. After launching from the Gulf Coast of Texas, Starship splashed down into the Indian Ocean as planned in its 4th test mission. Following disappointment in March when a previous re-entry attempt failed, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk took to social media to hail the mission's success despite the rocket taking some damage. Meanwhile, Boeing CST-100 Starliner launched from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida and after some 27 hours safely docked at the ISS, delivering 2 veteran astronauts, Barry Wilmore and Sunita Williams, to the orbiting platform on Thursday. Despite a glitch in several guidance control jet thrusters, the successful journey proved the vessel's flight worthiness, expanding the private sector space competition with Elon Musk's SpaceX. World leaders and heads of state gathered in Normandy, France on Thursday for ceremonies celebrating the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings and paid tribute to veterans of the Second World War. Present at the ceremonies were French President Emmanuel Macron, the UK's King Charles III, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as well as US President Joe Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Biden used his speech at the American Cemetery in Normandy to highlight the importance of continued support for Ukraine, saying it was invaded by a tyrant intent on domination. D-Day took place on June 6, 1944, when some 150,000 Allied soldiers invaded Nazi-occupied France by air and sea, coming ashore at 5 beaches. Thousands of service personnel died in the mission, which proved a turning point in the war for the Allied forces. The United Nations General Assembly elected Denmark, Greece, Pakistan, Panama and Somalia to the 15-member UN Security Council on Thursday. They will begin their 2-year terms on January 1, 2025, replacing Ecuador, Japan, Malta, Mozambique and Switzerland. The UN Security Council is the only UN body that has the authority to make legally binding decisions such as imposition of sanctions and use of force. It has 5 permanent veto-wielding members: the UK, US, Russia, France and China. 5 new members join every year by a voting procedure at the General Assembly. Seats are allocated to regional groups to ensure geographical representation. In the Himalayas, at least 9 Indian trekkers have died after getting trapped in a blizzard. The Indian Air Force's rescue teams airlifted the bodies of the deceased and 5 survivors to safety by helicopter on Thursday. A minister from India's southern state of Karnataka said the group of climbers were hit by a heavy blizzard during the hike, with snow and wind making movement impossible. He said that by 6 p.m., 2 trekkers succumbed to bad weather while they huddled together for the night on the route before 7 more died in the night. A guide with the group managed to alert rescue authorities on Tuesday evening about the situation, which helped the rescue teams reach the site early on Wednesday and begin the search. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Seoul saw the highest temperatures of the season so far yesterday, reaching above 31 degrees, combined with that strong sunshine. Heat continues today, feeling more like July, with highs hovering in the upper 20s in most places. Sun continues to shine down brightly, boosting UV rays to very high levels this afternoon. Now, temperatures should go up couple of notches for the southern provinces, but capital area should notice the highs going down a couple of notches, topping out at 29 degrees Celsius in most places. Then there is rain in the forecast starting from Jeju late this afternoon, gradually spreading to the rest of the country. It will rain down heavily on the south coast in Jeju with 20 to 60 millimeters of showers in store through early Sunday, but the rest of the country will receive 5 to 40 millimeters of rainfall. And that rain will bring a pleasant break from the heat on Saturday. Then temperatures going right back up for another scorcher on Sunday. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have at this hour. Arirang News will be back at 2 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.